everybody, Russ and My Hammers 11. Hope you are all safe and well. If you're new channel, please consider subscribing, hitting the bell icons. You may know any time new content on. As always, we'd like to thank our channel sponsors, Untuckit. Check them out in the description below. Today's guest, you'll see him on the West Ham Way. He's about to sort out, he's got a quiz night tonight with them lot as well. So it's Dennis. How are we doing, Dennis? How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good, man. Not feeling too Christmassy, as I'm sure many people aren't right now. But look, we can provide good content for people. And while people are stuck at home, you know, we have a bit of a captured audience compared to what we might do over Christmas. So let's get entertaining.
Exactly. It is, as you said, there's bugger all on the telly. That's the thing. Yeah. You know, Netflix, I remember when the first lockdown started, Netflix was like the godsend, wasn't it? Because it's like, oh my God, all these, it's so much. And now I look at it, looked at it last night, I was like, there's nothing to watch on Netflix. There's literally nothing to watch.
That's when Now TV comes in with all the Sky Atlantic stuff. I mean, yeah. My mum's currently binge watching Tin Star at the minute. And I'm just like watching, like, this isn't something that you would like, but okay.
You know what? Fair enough. So true. My wife, what did she watch? She binge watched. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it didn't sound right when I just said it. She binge watched. What was it on Netflix? Designated Survivor of Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah,
and it's like she's watching it, going really into like the FBI and the city, and I was like, when have you ever been interested about this? I've tried to get you in, like, what's the one with Claire Davis? What's Carrie Matthews? What's the series? It's been on for years. Yeah, Homeland. I've been trying to get into Homeland for like years, and she's like, "Nah, it's not for me." But she literally binge watched all of this, like, Designated Survivor with Kiefer Sutherland.
I caved, and I finally watched Game of Thrones during lockdown.
I still haven't.
Honestly, I'm not going to be that guy. For the first 6 seasons, some of the best stuff I've ever seen. Last two, they rush it. But what I hate is when people hype stuff. Because like people hype things to me, and I'm like, I watch like Breaking Bad. Everyone I work with, like, you've got to watch Breaking Bad. It is the greatest thing you're ever going to see. I watched it. I was like, it's good, but it is nowhere near as good as you lot make out.
True.
You know, so I'm not going to overhype it. But yeah, Game of Thrones is worth the watch. I'd say. A bit more graphic than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, finally got through that, and finally caved in and watched Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I don't regret. And that was. There's some episodes of that where I was laughing the entire time.
Yeah,
like, I was chuckling, not like manically laughing, but just chuckling.
Yeah,
it is as funny as people say it is.
I might bust that one out. Yeah, no, remember rewatching The Office, American Office. I did it from season 2, because season 1 I didn't really like it. Season 1 is basically the UK version, but with American accents. Where season 2 onwards was quite good. So I binge watched that. Then as soon as, like, it's one of these things. It's like I was literally flicking through it, and I was like, I've seen that. It's like, oh, and it's like, so then you turn to YouTube, and we're here. Hey.
Well, if you like The Office, mate, if you haven't seen it, recommend Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah.
I'm going to say Parks and Rec is a very good series as well.
Yeah, that's very funny, because I like the series where you can get into it. You know, like, well, there's like, you know, a good 10 or so seasons, isn't it? Otherwise, you feel like you're really invested in the characters, really, a little bit, in it. You know their characters, in, you know, or this is how they're going to react, you know, in series 7 and 8, because you know what's going on. Where a lot of the UK ones finish, like, you know, like Gavin and Stacey, and finish after a few series, and yet you can't really get involved. But anyway, obviously this is it's not a Netflix podcast. Maybe we should do. Maybe that's my next series.
Next venture, analysing characters.
Rusty Reviews. It writes itself. Rusty Reviews. That's it. Done. Welcome to Rusty. Anyway, we won't do that today. We're talking about West Ham, and obviously, you know, despite the fact Netflix sort of seems to be running out of content, West Ham never run out of content. There's always something going on with West Ham.
Always something happening at West Ham.
And we're playing all right, and we're all right. Oh, we're not bad. Not bad. You know, if someone said to me, it's funny. If someone said to me like a couple of days ago, oh yeah, if someone said to me, I'll be 7th by Christmas, I'll be happy. If someone said I'll be 10th by Christmas, I'd still be happy.
100%. After that Newcastle game, I was predicting a very terrible season, and us not picking up points till Fulham. I had to eat my words a little bit.
Yeah, but I don't mind being wrong when it's something like that. When it's a good wrong, when it's a bad wrong.
I was saying it last night. I hate being right because I predicted 3-0 Chelsea.
Yeah. And it's only the second game we haven't scored in all season, apparently, which is incredible. Only Mr. Sky came up with that stat, and I was like, I like that. I'm going to keep in that one.
Yeah.
It was annoying yesterday. Yeah, the Chelsea game was annoying, wasn't it? It was one of those games where you come out of it thinking, how have we lost that 3-0?
Yeah, 3-0 flat at Chelsea, but
Yeah,
equally, it was quite avoidable. But we're not here to analyse the game or me to repeat everything I said the other day.
no, exactly. But there's a difference with West Ham, I think, this season. I don't know what it is. It's just a bit. I don't know. It's optimism. I'm not used to it being a West Ham fan, but it's a feeling I've never felt before. It's like it's not all doom and gloom.
No, not at all. And therefore, if a 3-0 Chelsea has ruined your 3-0 or a solid defeat to Chelsea has come as a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah,
we must be doing stuff right. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Some of the players in my 11 are from bygone years where 3-0 defeat to Chelsea is like, okay, well that's an improvement on last year. Let's see if we get it out 2-0 next time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And at least it means there's no games until after Christmas now to ruin our Christmas. So that's not too bad. But the Brighton game's going to be a huge game for us, I think, in terms of how things go. I still think we'll be safe by the end of January. I've said it.
I was picking February. I'm sticking with February. February is when when we'll know how this season's gone and when you need to start sitting David Moyes down and talking about a contract. Yes. Before the Liverpool game, we had a talk in the morning on the writer's block, or fans view as it's called now, and people talk. It was like, should Moyes get a contract? And I was like, that question has just infuriated me because we've won 2 games of football and come back against Spurs. That's not deserving of a new contract 1 month into the season. Come on, let's review it in the middle.
Yeah, I agree. And it'll be interesting, obviously, when January comes, what happens team-wise, and we'll see. But it's I don't foresee us being in any real trouble this season now. I'll be honest, touch wood. I've said it now. But yeah,
now, a couple of big injuries could change that in the short term.
I just think there's worse teams than us if
we stay on this course for another month or so, late January, mid-February, even then, let's say we pick up a big injury to Rice, Fabianski, or Bonner, I don't think it's going to make enough difference in order for us to get relegated.
No.
But come on, let's not be talking about relegation. We've been hovering around Europe the last few weeks. Let's not.
Exactly.
Let's not. That's what someone again. When a few of the players in my team, and when I grew up watching West Ham, that's what you talked about. You don't talk. We're not talking about it this year. It's the one positive. In this time of uncertainty is that West Ham are, I wouldn't say flying because again I'm going to completely jinx it, but we have not struggled for the first time. But only 4 defeats in since the start of the season. That's pretty much unheard of. Even last year at the Bolton and Allardyce's last season, we had more than 4 defeats coming into Christmas. So,
well, isn't it the joint third best? Isn't it the joint best run beginning of Premier League history for us, or something? Other 13 games.
Man United, it would have been our best ever start. I think if we had beaten Man United, but then because we didn't beat Man United, I lost and then drew with Palace. We've fallen short of the I
think we're in line. I think it's the same as the Bilic season on points, not necessarily on goal, but on points, and we've still a positive goal difference as well. And as you said, it's such a West Ham thing to think we're playing really, we're in the top
constantly
page.
Looking over our shoulders,
and we still like, we're not going to get relegated. Rather than actually, let's look forward. And that is the trouble with being a West Ham fan, is that we have always got this. We've got this speed bump. We know the speed bump's coming, but we don't know when it's coming, and so we're just preparing ourselves for the speed bump rather than enjoying the journey to get there.
Quote David Bowie: "The film is a saddening bore because we've seen it 10 times or more."
It's so
we know what's coming.
It's true. That is very true. Right. So, first question, 10 minutes in, is why are you a West Ham fan, Dennis? What's the reason behind it?
It's a long, winding story, and I do have a habit of doing a monologue. But so, growing up, I didn't really get into football too much at a young age. I'd say I wasn't so much. It was just something my dad watched. I remember World Cup 1998, I absolutely fell in love with football. I fell in love with the Dutch football team. I love like that. I didn't really know what exactly, like, I wasn't really appreciating the skills back then. I'll be honest with you. One of my most not infamous things I remember as a child to do with football was I kicked a football and it hit a plant pot. My mum had a go at me, and I said I can't control where the ball goes because I was that naive. This is when I was 4 or 5. I was that naive. I didn't really understand football. I didn't watch it until I was 6 years old in the 1998 World Cup. And then I started watching football, and obviously, naturally, like, my dad was glad that I was into football. She started taking me to some Watford games. And I'm from Watford, and I started really getting into Watford, and they got promoted to the Premier League that year, 98, 99. But I remember he was a Man United fan, and he wanted me to be a Manchester United fan first and foremost. He did not want to support Watford. But then I started watching, and even though Man United won, I really liked the team they played against, which was West Ham. And so then I sort of fluctuated. Like my dad took me to Watford games, but then I wouldn't really support them because my dad was telling me I wasn't allowed. They'll only let you down, he said, which is good foreshadowing for me becoming a West Ham fan.
Exactly.
But yeah. And then I sort of hopped out. I really like West Ham had that good finish. I love Paolo Di Canio. I was watching them on Match of the Day. We had quite a fun free scoring season. And then the beginning of the 2000-2001 season, when we signed Davor Suker, I was grounded for my mate's birthday party for my dad. My dad had some form of bet on about West Ham Man United. I can't remember what it was. And Man United were cruising it 2-0. If you remember, Di Canio and Suker scored 2 late equalisers. And my dad was angry, and I was there just like, yeah. And I think that I pinpoint that as the moment that I fully became a West Ham fan, because of a bit of get your own back at your dad.
Yeah, dad.
Then onwards, I just supported West Ham, and Paolo Di Canio was my hero. I had the 99-2000 video bought for me at Christmas, and wore that video out to the point where there'd be moments where it'd go fuzzy from where I've stopped it, and then started watching it again as a child. My dad still wanted to be a Man United fan, but I think he realised I was lost, and I think the logic was, well, at least he's supporting a Premier League football team. But in later years, people tell me, well, you shouldn't support your local team, you should support Watford. And I had the choice of West Ham because I've got West Ham family, all members of my family, extended members of my family that are West Ham fans.
Sure.
So the options in my family really are Chelsea, West Ham, and Man United. And for some absolutely bizarre reason, my cousin supports Wolves. There is no logic behind it, but he supports Wolves. Someone asked me, what did he go to university? And I'm like, no, he just supports Wolves. He supported them since the late 90s. No one knows why. They weren't even doing well, just he supports them. So fair enough. So that's the long, winding, ambiguous story to be a West Ham fan. Sort of fell into it through the fact that I wanted to support my local football team because I was 5 or 6. Daddy wouldn't let me, and then sort of as retribution, I supported the team that cost him money, but I quite liked them anyway. So that's how I just came into it. And then roll on 2 years, I could name everything to do with West Ham Football Club. I was like fanatical about it.
Yeah.
And here I am now. So
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's funny a lot. It doesn't matter how people get there. When they do get there, they're in, aren't they? It's not like something where they dip their toe in and they don't fancy the water. Everyone once you're in. It seems with West Ham.
It was like, I remember someone asked me, I think it was my aunt or something, when they got relegated, so you're going to stop supporting them now? And I'm like, no. Even at the age of 11, it doesn't work like that. You don't change teams. Because I remember that was the first season. I remember my first ever game, West Ham game, was Chelsea at home in 2003 when Di Canio came on and scored.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I was the opposite end of the pitch, so I didn't really get to see a lot of it. I was only 10. But I could say that my first game was Chelsea at home, 2002-2003 season, Di Canio's last game of the season. Quite far up, so I could see Di Canio doing the lap of honour, but I was nowhere near him. And I genuinely believed we were going to stay up after that. And then Well, then Birmingham, then Bolton, Spurs fielded a weakened team against Bolton, and they won 1-0. And then that started my lifelong absolute blind hatred of Tottenham Hotspur. I consider them our number one rivals. I don't care too much for Millwall. Not in a harsh way anything to Millwall, but it's like because a lot of fans of other generations would have grown up with us regularly playing them and other local rivals. For me, our biggest rivals has always been Tottenham, and the only other football club I have any ill will towards, for obvious reasons, is Sheffield United.
True.
I'm not particularly bothered. Okay, I am bothered by Millwall when we play them, and obviously I'm bothered by the antics of Millwall fans and the things they chant. But they're a League One Championship yo-yo club. Lions don't compare themselves with sheep, even though they're lions and we're irons. But you know what I mean.
I know you mean. It's true, and that's the thing. And as you said, even like going to your first game, it's like you get to experience. It's more than just the football, isn't it? It's a sensory overload, particularly for a young kid, 10 years old. You go there and it's like, you've probably never seen that many people in one place.
I've been to a few games before, but I'd only been to watch Watford, and this is no disrespect, but Vicarage Road, I don't know if you've been, Russ, but it's a very compact, small stadium. Like, what people liked about Upton Park, Vicarage was like that, except historically with one big gaping hole in the side where they had a Victorian stand that was derelict.
Yes.
I know we're not here to talk about Watford, but the Pozos have done very well, invested well. They've now got a fairly good stadium, still tiny.
Yeah.
But I wasn't then going to Upton Park. It was massive. A couple of things. So my first ever away game was Watford away because it was only around the corner. But I still remember my mum and dad wouldn't let me go without a parent. Quite annoyed by that. But my dad was ill on the day, so then my mum had to come. That was a nightmare. Had to explain everything. Why are they chanting that? Why are they cheering this? It's just enjoy like the atmosphere. She wanted to know why we were cheering. It was the Watford away. I think I actually tweeted Jimmy one of my favourite moments while being on West Ham, where he was getting a tweet back from Jimmy Walker about this because he was like, this was the day that Jimmy Walker was just the hero of the day, despite, in fairness, not doing an awful lot. He made a couple of routine saves, but he was like, everyone was chanting him and he was in front of us. I remember news got through that Reading had gone 1-0 down. Yeah. And we started celebrating, and then he asked us what the score was. We shouted back, and he started running around, punching the air and telling the subs. Like, I think we had a corner or something, and he ran to the edge there and he just shouted at the subs what the score was. And then it was just Jimmy Walker mania. The majority of the chanting that day was just about Jimmy Walker. Because we, especially the first half when it was all in Watford's end. I think we went ahead early. Ferdinand and Harewood scored that day, and that was another great experience. And the other thing I've got is I'm a rare lucky soul that has actually played football on Upton Park, although not an actual match. So I'm going to sound really, really nerdy here, but I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I think someone in the youth academy was a patron or a big wig in Diabetes UK charity, someone who would that, and so it organised for a football day for people suffering from type 1 diabetes to go train with a professional football club, and it just happened to be West Ham. Met Tony Carr, had shirt signed and everything there, and got to play. I've got some photos. There's an absolutely horrendous photo out there somewhere that I have promised the West Ham way guys I show of me trying to recreate that Bobby Moore sort of that thing where corner where he'd the arms like that, and I just looked horrendous. I just looked like my face, my eyes are half closed, my hair is like randomly spiked at one point again where I've just come off a football pitch and just gone like that.
Yeah,
and so I've actually effectively had a kickabout and training drills on Upton Park one sort of June, July day. Kirbishley was in charge because I actually remember Tony Carr actually making a comment about how Kirbishley might get sacked or something. I remember that. It was something like there was all this talk about how Alan Kirbishley may be going at the end around that time. It was before the season even started, and someone else was West Ham fan like us. I think Tony Carr was like, "No, he's not going to get sacked." And it was like Tony can't at least acknowledge the rumours. But I can't remember where the basis of the rumours are, other than the fact that we didn't have a relegation battle, so therefore the 07-08 season was deemed boring.
Yeah, well, that's the thing people did say about the Kirbishley era, wasn't it? It was a boring era, but it's been funny. I'd rather have a couple of boring eras than a squeaky bum time.
That's what's on the West Ham way. We just need a year of just average, just bouncing between eighth and 11th. Like the second half of the 2001-2002 season, just steady progression. Or 08-09, where we went on that majestic run under Zola, and came within. Wouldn't say within a whisker, but within, I think, 3 or 4 points of Europa League that year.
Yeah, I mean that's what I think in terms of progression from last season. I was talking to someone today about it, and for me, probably based on our squad, 8th to 11th is where we should be.
8th to 11th for the occasional exciting cup run is all I want. I've said it before, but all I want is the Redknapp years. That's just what I want. I just want. Or the later Redknapp years. I want 2007 to 2000. That's what I want West Ham to be. And it's one of the things I think it's a very British thing. So just like things how they were when you were a kid is a good excuse, especially in discussing other sort of things. It's like but that's because that's what I had. Like I didn't really support West Ham, but I've looked back and it's like in the back of my mind I do vaguely remember Eyal Berkovic scoring against Spurs. I vaguely remember Ian Wright replicating the Woodcock red card from that 98-99 season, from when I sparingly paid attention to football after the 98 World Cup. Again, this West Ham, the slow build to becoming a West Ham fan was always there. It was just, officially happened in the summer of 2000. So
yeah. You're right, and that, I mean, for me, that was probably my most enjoyable time at West Ham, was that Redknapp era. Not just from a football perspective, but just a soap opera perspective. Had all these different characters.
I mean, the only thing that comes close to it is the Billick year, like that period of time, that summer of 2015 to sort of spring 2016. It was that petered out, especially that 4-1 defeat at Swansea was a bit like, shouldn't have got our hopes up. But there were, there was optimism that we were going to get top 4, let alone Europe.
Very true.
We beat Stoke and Swansea, and I think we do finish 4th in that season. It's like absolutely mental how and again in hindsight, a lot of people look back to Allardyce years in hindsight, but at the time it was miserable and frustrating, because that 14-15 season we could have been so much more with a bit better investment and a bit not relying on reverting to 4-5-1, a flat 4-5-1. And then having a breath of fresh air of a manager that was taking risks, but rather than wax lyricals about Billick, it didn't really work out in the end. But that, just appreciate the time you had.
No, exactly, and I think, and that's that. And again, hindsight and looking back is obviously something which we tend to do a lot of, because we don't tend to have anything exciting to look forward to. And to be honest, looking back at it, in terms of Bilic, you're thinking Pellegrini, those type of guys, even Zola to some extent. Sam was out of them lot. He had a plan which he stuck to. You know what I mean? In terms of a way of, as you said, it was boring. It was 4-5-1. He got players in to do the job and fit the system, but it worked. I think Bilic was a little bit, a bit haphazard, and some people might say taking risks, some people might say haphazard. And
back in hindsight, at the time, it was fucking bad. Like under Allardyce, when you look at that Billick period, you go, oh well. But actually, if you think about it, Allardyce was methodical. The big problem with Allardyce, and I say this all the time, and so there's no DT moment here where I'm, going to say that backtracks. I've said this so many times on the show. If Allardyce won games of football, I wouldn't mind. I don't mind about that. If you obviously not going to win every game, but if it was like this Moyes situation we're at now, where there are obvious errors being made in the selection and the recruitment and things like that at times, but we are picking up on average the results we need. If Allardyce had done that and finished 8th every year, we'd go, I'll take it, because you wanted that stability. You want that sort of Harry Redknapp level of stability.
Sure.
Whereas Billick, as much as you loved it for that 1 year, 16-17 season, he was clueless half the time.
Well, I mean, yeah, and he had players to sort of get him out of jail at times, to be honest. And that particular first the obviously the bowling year, the last season, he haven't had the sort of the euphoria of being the last season. So it was the last time we'd play this team here. It was the last time we played this team here. So there's always going to be that extra spice.
Certain players like Cresswell and Noble played really out of their skin
They
that
did,
year,
yeah.
above their ability. And I think they would probably even acknowledge that. But that season, they were supermen because they were
And
just so hyped up for it.
yeah, and I think, but then then going full circle, going back to the Moyes era now. You can see, as you said, bar obviously maybe some slight changes and some slight, he's there does seem to be like a structure in place from my
There seems,
perspective
there
when I
seems
look
to
at
be an
it.
idea with the tools that he's got, certainly.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and again, rather than turning this into a show to analyze stuff, is that the problem is that the recruitment's not there,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
as we've seen with Antonio, as much as I personally really rate Sebastian Haller, obviously Antonio fits the system better.
Yeah.
If we had signed it, and if we had signed Josh, this is where Josh King was his priority over Ben Rama, probably for as a reason like this.
Yeah.
David Moyes has shown time and time again he has no problem leaving a big money player on
No.
the bench if he doesn't approve of them. Hernandez, Anderson, now Haller, and Ben Rama. He will bench Ben Rama until he trusts him. He did that with Fornells. He didn't trust Fornells initially. Fornells earned his trust. Now Fornells is getting the liberties that certain other players got under him.
Yep.
He lost his trust in Anderson, for example.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's where the problem is. So we do need some investment in January. But what I worry is that the board will go, we'll look at the position. We don't need it. And then suddenly January, what do you know? Soucek has done his anterior cruciate knee ligament. Antonio's out for the season with a torn hamstring. And let's say, just for argument's sake, Andrei Yarmolenko gets sold in January for whatever reason. So then suddenly you're ridiculously very over reliant on Ben Rama and Bowen. Ben Rama, who may not necessarily have been trusted by Moyes, and Bowen, who's in danger of being overworked, and you've got a huge hole in the middle that needs to be plugged by Robert Snodgrass or Mark Noble. No disrespect to the pair of them. Snodgrass is much better as a winger, and Noble just did not seem up to speed last night.
No, he didn't. It's all slowed down. I mean, he was playing his normal game, but I think our game has moved forward somewhat since in those,
there's no flies on him. It's just that's the way football works, sadly.
Yeah, it does. And it's like you're right. So the sort of Soucek and Rice pairing are very dynamic in terms of the way one moves forward, one hangs back, and You didn't see it. I mean, yesterday I was looking at it again, and it was almost like when it was Mark and Deck playing together. Deck was doing the holding back role a little bit, and you lose that impetus and you can see when Declan got the ball, he really wanted to drive forward, because that's what he's been doing recently. And so yeah, it was a bit of a surprise when Mark's name was on the team sheet. I'll be honest, and I think it was for him because apparently he only found out in the morning. So
Lanzini was probably meant to start, and Lanzini picked up a knock. So it's a shame, really.
I think it would have been a different game with Lanzini playing of those three as the three with him. So, but anyway, as you said, you do it. You lot do all the analysing stuff. That's not our bag, right? Okay, let's talk about your 11, Dennis. Right, so if when we get on the team, then we get on the channel rather, they pick their 11. The only really criteria is they have to be alive to see them play, but they can pick whoever they want. They might have a little theme. I believe you may have a little theme for us today. So let's tell us a theme. Introduce the theme, the concept.
It's quite a vague theme, but it's around disrespect. And when I say disrespect, I mean players. So that's what I've used to lump them all together. Players that either you look back in hindsight and we gave them unnecessary stick.
Yeah.
Or we didn't appreciate what they brought at the time. Or they were disrespected on their way out of the team or by the club themselves. So the owners, cough, cough, wink, wink, or other people have disrespected them or treated them badly. Sure. Furthermore, wider footballing world. So we may have rated them, but the wider footballing world not only did not rate them, but actually went out of their way to say they're only good because they're playing for West Ham. So that is the general theme. I have gone with my strongest 11. There is one omission that I have left out that on ability would one walk into the team ahead of the other person, but I don't think the disrespect was enough. It's a disrespect with an asterisk next to us, and it's only a very particular disrespect from certain fan groups. So,
Okay.
and I will explain in full, give my justification. So, hopefully everyone's got that that's listening. If not, you might need to listen to it a few times. There's a hindsight of watching it when it goes out. You can rewind it.
Yeah.
It will all become very clear as we go through the positions. I'm going for a 4-4-2 because I am a 90s boy. And yes, so should we start with the goalkeeper?
Start with the goalie then, Dennis.
Goalkeeper. So I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want me to reveal my pick and then do my honorable mentions, or do you want me to go round the houses and explain why who gets it?
Honorable mentions and then pick the person. Well, I mean, but you can do, just mix it up. Mix it up.
So the goalkeepers have shortlisted Robert Green, Jussi Jääskeläinen, and Lucas Fabianski, and I'm going to explain why all of them get there. Robert Green, I think, should be very self-explanatory. He made that one mistake for England, and everyone was like, he's a bad goalie. People have only rated him because he played for West Ham. It's only West Ham. I'm sorry. He's taking shots from the same players as all the other 19 goalkeepers out there. It's not a case of he just played for West Ham. He was selected in that team for England for a reason, and he got caught out by a bobble. If he makes that mistake in a pre-season friendly away at Dagenham and Redbridge, no one cares. He did it at the World Cup. That World Cup, people made mistakes. Rooney missed a sitter. Was that held against him for the rest of his career? No. People say, oh, but look at what he did after that. I said, yeah, but look at Robert Green. There's so many games, especially under Avram Grant, where Robert Green kept us in it. I remember Arsenal away. He almost got us a point on his own. I remember an Arsenal fan who messaged me was like, oh, my God, you are right about Robert Green. Like, you're right. Because I used to go on in the sixth form common room that Robert Green is a bloody good goalkeeper. It's not just because he plays for West Ham. So that's why Robert Green. Now, Jussi is because, although, and I will admit, anyone who's got me on Facebook could see, I posted one hell of a rant about Jussi Jääskeläinen after Norwich away in the 13-14 season when he had a mare, gave away a dodgy penalty and free kick where he just rolled over backwards when it went in the top corner. It was like, well, at least jump, mate. But he was bloody good for us in that first season.
Yeah.
And he, again, like, won us points on his own. A Spurs game where Gareth Bale broke all our hearts, Jussi really kept us in it. His shot stopping was amazing, but his reflexes have gone. So I'm going to say that he got quite a bit of disrespect. And you look back and think, oh, he's an older goalie. Whereas actually, until game 5 or game 6 in the second season for us in 13-14, he was a bloody good goalkeeper.
Yeah.
If you think he'd only conceded one goal in 5 games at one point in that season. That was a free kick, and he was always liable. He was always a liability at free kicks, even at Bolton. He weren't the biggest goalie of all. I think he was only. I say only. I'm saying this is a 5'5" bloke. He was only 6 foot, so 5'11", 6 foot. He weren't the biggest goalie.
He always looked untidy, didn't he? He always looked untidy with his shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he'd always like, he blatantly wanted the short sleeve ones. I remember at West Ham, we'd always have them rolled up to the elbows.
Yeah.
Always like that look. I really like the goalkeeper kits that he wore. But yeah, usually I think gets a bit of disrespect. And the one I'm going to have to explain and justify is Fabianski. And this is a pet peeve of mine, is the amount of sites that are saying, oh, we need a new goalie. Fabianski has made some brilliant saves for us this season.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And last night, his footwork alone, his instincts as a goalkeeper, stopped Werner from scoring a tap-in to make it 2-0 after 20 minutes, which would have killed the game. Fabianski's getting a lot of disrespect, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for longevity. I'm all for a long-term plan. But we have two or three very good young goalkeepers. We've got Trott and Nang, and I can't pronounce his name, but the Hungarian kid that's 17 that's meant to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go out and spend 30 million on another goalkeeper. I would just manage Fabianski well, rest him in cup games. I think he's good for another year after this season. Then you think about bringing him in an Nang or Trott. That's what I would do. No reason why he seems like he seems a very nice bloke every time you see him in an interview, and he's a competent goalkeeper. But Randolph, with the exception of those couple of games where it meant it was him or Roberto, there's not a lot of point in him playing him. And I think he's wasting valuable years of his career as a goalkeeper. He's in his peak years. I would have persevered with David Martin, bless the guy, But my pick, based on the sheer disrespect he got after the World Cup, is Robert Green.
Yeah.
Based on that, because Fabianski has only been this season from our fans, and usually it was he did get terrible at the end, but you just need to remember what he achieved for us in his first year. Considering we had Robert Green in goal, very calming presence in goal for I think 6 seasons by that point, and he left on a free. I think to get Yuzi in as an experienced, cool head for what was still an inexperienced defence with Reed and Tompkins starting, I think absolute underrated signing on a free transfer.
And he always used to turn up when he always used to turn up as when he came to Upton Park for Bolton. If I remember, he always put a good shift in. He always, when he was playing for Bolton, he always used to play quite well against us. But
Robert Green for me is the disrespected goalkeeper of this bunch. Not so much by West Ham fans, but more from the wider sporting world. People did not appreciate just how consistent and how good that goalkeeper was.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Greeno's in.
Greeno is in.
Who's next, Dennis? You pick next.
We'll go from left to right.
Okay.
Go left back, and I've got George McCartney down, who is not the best ability-wise, but very consistent. I think now this is an odd one because he actually was voted our most underrated player on West Ham Way. We had some specials during lockdown where we picked a player, a goalkeeper, a defender, a midfielder, and a striker that was underrated. And on a controversial tiebreaker vote, George McCartney beat Ricardo Vazte. Quite controversial, but George McCartney makes this list because, again, he's a player that when we re-signed him, he goes, it's George McCartney. Can't we do any better? Yet he was very consistent. He was he started on, I think, almost all of our games when he signed for us in 2011 on loan and sturdy, and had certain games such as Cardiff away where he ran the show down the left and even got on the score sheet. I don't think he was a world beater. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he gets anywhere close to our best 11 or many people's best 11. For my disrespected XI, he's on the short list. And the other one is his predecessor, which is Harita Ilunga, for the disrespect shown by both Avram Grant and Sam Allardyce to him. I felt he was quite a consistent left back. He had second season syndrome after making a loan deal permanent, which a lot of our players have always done. The fact that he was dropped mercilessly for, Wayne Bridge, who came in on loan and was a shocker. I mean, on paper it made sense, but then after 2 or 3 games, you got to go, this guy ain't up for it. This guy doesn't care. This guy's just winding down his contract at Man City. And I think at times we played Tel Ben Haim at left back instead of Ilunga under Grant. I'm Avram Grant's biggest apologist on YouTube, but I can't defend that. I can't. And then Allardyce took one look at him. I think he played the first couple of games, and then he just moved him on to Doncaster. And I remember Ilunga actually made some very cryptic tweets about Allardyce when there was lots of pressure on Allardyce in the 13-14 season about like when it's time to go or something like that, and hashtag Big Sam. And it was just like, so something big definitely happened there. So for that, Ilunga makes a list, but that Ilunga's disrespect is all on, him not being selected while still being on poor form, but having worse choices ahead of him. And maybe some falling out with a manager, whereas McCartney was just under appreciation. So for me, McCartney makes the list, and I have to say left back was the toughest position.
Always is, isn't it?
I think our left backs have never been outstanding quality. They've never been bad. Well, not with a few exceptions, they've not been that bad. And I think they've always had the right level. Like Cresswell has got some stick, but his stick has been deserved, and he's overcome it and become appreciated. Same with Mazuaka. So therefore, I eliminated them from the equation. I think they got the right level of stick for their performances, but then when they started playing well, we moved on from it. Whereas McCartney, I think, never got the credit in the first place.
Sure. Yeah.
in my opinion.
No, I
So
agree.
my own personal nickname for him, Gorgeous George. He makes
Gorgeous.
the. I just said it one time and it made everyone laugh. Just Gorgeous George makes the list.
There we go.
So
He's in.
uh, left-sided centre back.
Yep.
So on the left side, so obviously I've separated the centre backs onto the left and right side. So there's 2 for the left side and 3 for the right side. Okay, because I didn't mention this. So for the left-hand sided centre back, first up, we've got a player that I think the disrespect comes from not remembering how brilliant he was for the first season he was first. In fact, he won Hammer of the Year in his first year, and then being remembered just for his injuries and being underperforming under Avram Grant, which is Danny Gabbidon.
Yeah.
I think Danny Gabbidon, people do not remember how good that guy was. It was just a constant groin and hamstring, I believe, injuries. Feel free to correct me if I got his injuries.
No, right, yeah.
Anyone that knows, but from my understanding, I remember one game I watched him in 06-07, he just sort of broke down on the touchline. Not broke down like his, but he went on the touchline just holding his leg, and it was like he'd only just come back, and it was like, oh great, he's been rushed back. Brilliant. That's quality. I think it was Reading at home. I could be wrong. I know we lost that day. That's what I can tell you. We lost. Pardew was in charge and we lost. And then we rushed him back too many times. He missed almost 07-08 season. He gave away a dodgy penalty against Portsmouth. But that was a game a season where we had about 17 centre backs, didn't we?
Yeah.
He had Ferdinand, Upson, Collins, who then was out with ACL. You had Davenport. You had him. You had Neill filling in at centre back. I remember we had Pantsill filling at centre back one game. We had George McCartney filling at centre back one game. We had Johnny Spector, and then finally James Tompkins made his debut that season, I believe, against Derby. I could be wrong, but I think it was Derby or Everton, one of the two. We played we had so many injuries that year, and Danny Gabbidon was either injured or left out. He never really 08-09, he never got a look in. 9-10, again, I don't really remember him playing all day. Finally got back into the team around the Avram Grant year, but by then he was such Mitch-Max partnering. He was partnered with very inexperienced Winston Reid, a very inexperienced James Tompkins. And I don't think it was anywhere near a fair reflection on him.
No.
Other choice for left-sided centre back. Now, this is a Dennis special, and I'm going to have to explain it. But Manuel da Costa, who was not the best centre back, I am not saying that, but he performed very well. He scored some key goals. He scored a brilliant header away at Everton for a vital point. He had some off-field problems, granted, but in a team that massively underperformed with very vulnerable defence that leaked goals, I think he came in and actually improved us to an extent. He had big shoes to fill with James Collins leaving, and he was quite inexperienced. He never went on to become a top player. He was playing out in Russia and playing for Russia and other clubs. I think he ended up in Spain.
He's in Turkey now, yeah.
But yeah, he's a player that I think was massively misremembered rather than disrespected, and I think he performed a lot better than people gave him credit at the time. Equally, I always loved the moment that he squared up to Didier Drogba in away at Chelsea, where it was a terrible game. We had so many injuries. I think Robert Green had the armband that day because Noble, Parker were both out injured. We were 2 down. I think he just decided, no, screw this. He squared up to Drogba, and then John Terry was like, no, Didier, no, let me handle this. He squared up to John Terry, and Da Costa didn't back down. And it was like Da Costa just squared up to 2 of the hardest men in the Premier League at that time. All you need now is Vidic standing behind them as like the final boss. Da Costa was like, no, not having it. No. Just shoved him back. I was like, yeah. So I'll never forget that. But out of the two, though, I think purely because of how good he was, but because he's remembered for a poor season and then all the injuries in between, it's got to be Danny Gabbidon for me.
Yeah,
Danny Gabbidon, absolute colossus at the back. And my uncle Gary, who is a Liverpool fan, but he born and bred Cardiff. I remember he told me that summer we went to go visit them in Wales, and he told me, he goes, not going to try and do the Welsh accent. He goes, I'm not too sure on James Collins, but with Danny Gabbidon, you've got one hell of a player. You expect him to probably be bought by a much bigger team in 2 years.
Sure.
Didn't work out, but
No.
but this was when we were promoted, and it was like we're going to be a relegation battle. But he was like, "Oh, you've done yourself good there. I'm not sure about your other defenders, and I'm not sure if James Collins can cut it in the Premier League." How wrong he was. But too sure about James Collins, but he said for a partnership they're great. But Danny Gabbidon is the man, is what he was saying. So Gabbers gets in there ahead of Da Costa because Da Costa was mainly, I just think he played better than people gave him credit.
No, I agree. I agree. And then he crept back into people's minds last season because he had a fight on the pitch where he kicked off with Sofiane Feghouli in a Superliga game.
Yeah, it was, ex West Ham manager.
VAR'd as well. Yes.
I think I think fake Colton must have been all over that, surely, because I know Bam actually loves Turkish football.
Yeah. Well, I think he was semi-retired then. He's only just come back, hasn't he, to the Twitter sphere, I believe.
He's only just come back, yeah, but he's been on Instagram this entire time. So you gotta get what we end up following on Instagram.
Okay, I'll put Gabs in.
Gabs.
Who's next? Who's his second centre back then, Dennis?
Centre back. So we got a tough decision to make for right centre back. I mean, there's not a lot between these three for me.
Yeah.
However, I've come to a logical decision that should be popular with everyone. So number one, going to go for Anton Ferdinand, because again, that 05-06 season, the man was linked with Barcelona. Now, was he the best ever centre-back? No. Was he as good as his brother? Absolutely not. But for West Ham, he was always quite well. He had a tough spell in 06-07, but they had a lot of, that was when him, Rio Coker, and Marlon Airwood had a lot of off-field problems. I remember there was the old Bentley Boys Club.
Yeah.
I think Teddy Sheringham had to take them all to one side and was like, "What are you doing with your lives?" I think Teddy Sheringham had to have an intervention at one point with Anton and Rio Coker. Not so much Marlon Harewood, who wasn't as involved, but I think there was a bit of an attitude problem in his dressing room for him. But Anton was a brilliant centre back. In the 07-08 season, he had a very good season, probably one of our only consistent performers in a very strange season. A strange season when nothing happened, but everything happened. And then was disrespected by the club, being sold, presumably against his will and against the manager's will, on his way out to Sunderland. Now, I don't know if he wanted the move. I don't have any inside contacts. I'm not I'm not going to claim to be. But my understanding was it was a move that the only party that wanted it was the West Ham board to desperately try and raise some funds ahead of the season. And also the fact that he's not quite as remembered. He's more remembered for not doing so well at Sunderland, going to QPR in a disappointing QPR team, and then off playing in Reading, Turkey, and found his feet, found a bit of popularity and form playing League One, playing Southend in League One towards the end of his career. And obviously he's got a documentary out on iPlayer that I reckon everyone should watch about racism in football, which is great. But I think people don't remember just how good he was for us. Let's forget about the 05-06 season for a minute. 04-05, that run up to the playoffs, him and Wardy were solid.
Very much so. Very much so.
The next person, James Tompkins, for the way that he was disrespected on his way out, seen as the fourth best centre back at fourth best centre back at the club, and James Collins is happy to sit on the bench. So, we only see you as a bench player. We're going to flog you for, in hindsight, not enough money, but at the time it was like, we're notoriously bad at selling players. Okay, 10 million. We got 10 million for a player. Bloody hell. And he could fit in at right back, although he wasn't necessarily happy to do so. I'm sure he would have accepted the game time. And that season we had 16-17, we had no end of problems at right back. Again, we end up playing Reed, Nordveit, Antonio, Arbeloa, who West Ham convinced him to retire, which is brilliant. Sam Byram, no end of problems at right back that year. And if we had kept hold of James Tompkins, all goes away.
And then And also, there was like if I remember, as soon as Tompkins left, there was a couple of injuries to our centre backs where you'd have probably ended up playing centre back anyway. You know, it's
Hard Northfight playing centre back away at Leicester.
Yeah,
Boxing
exactly.
Day or New Year's Eve, one of the two. No, it weren't Boxing Day. We smashed Swansea that day.
Yeah, we did.
But yeah, so I remember that. So Tompkins got quite disrespected by the club by being deemed surplus to requirements, or not so much surplus, but expendable.
Yeah.
Whereas should have kept hold of him. But equally, then if you're gonna try and keep 4 centre backs happy, I can sort of understand. That that's a tough thing to do.
We sort of have, we try and keep 3 happy at the moment, aren't we? Or more really, because Craig Dawson as well, and Winston Reid as well. We signed a guy today, or in January, that Danish guy today as well.
Oh, brilliant! I actually haven't seen that yet, but that's good. He looks bloody promising.
Yeah,
To be fair.
January.
I said that about Neill Henry, so he could be the next Neill Henry.
Yeah.
So, and then the final purchase at centre back, I really hinted at it with my description, but it's James Collins.
Yeah,
purely for how the board treated him. You know, it all stems back from Brighton away, where he's sort of, in a way, stuck up for the fans by going to the fans like the money, like, where's the money? You know? And I think the board were very vindictive about that. He's come back as an ambassador, so that's probably stopped him from speaking out about it, and probably wise on their part. But simply for that, James Collins is on this list, and James Collins gets the slot because of the amount of disrespect, and also the fact, you know, I don't know how you are with swearing on this channel, but I'm trying not to swear. But how the bleeping hell did he not get a testimonial? It is diabolical.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before that, you know, it's one of those things now with football, and the money takes over from the purity of football, I think. So, you know, it was, you know, there's no loyalty in football now, it seems. You know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you know, you'd have regularly 2 or 3 players in your team, in your squad, who've had a testimonial. You know, Mark Noble is the exception to the rule in the modern day. And with Ginge, it just didn't. It was more of a financial thing. I think emotions, and it's happened all the time at West Ham. Billy Bonds 799. You know, Steve Potts 499. You know, they don't. You know, even then they didn't. You know, Lyle or whatever didn't give them that extra game to get 800. You know, it's always happened. I think it's our modern day version now.
The lads themselves, I remember organising especially when the Everton game was saved. I think it was already set up that Ginge came on at the end and took the armband off Noble.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me as if it was a whitewash or whatever. And I think, I'll be honest with you, Allardyce probably would have been sound with it. Give away a penalty and give it a Ginge.
Yeah.
And just let him tuck it in, tell the keeper to stand by the post. They did something for Stuart Pearce on his last game, I remember.
Yeah.
Brighton away, I think David Besant deliberately pushed him over or something. Got picked up the yellow card. They gave away a penalty, and Dave Besant stood by the post. And Pearce hit the crossbar or something like that. I think Besant tried to let him score, but he still missed.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always work like that. And I know they do that in testimonies. I don't know if the FA probably would have given us all fines for organising that or match fixing.
Quite possibly.
Let Ginge score on his last game.
But I think
Ginge makes it for that.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit of a home run, isn't it? As soon as everyone gets back in the stadium, him on the pitch doing a halftime interview or pre-match, you know, saying goodbye properly, it's a home run, isn't it? It's an easy thing to do when we can all go back into the grounds, and I think that'll be a good way to send him off. And
you know, back off the board's back, so therefore the board won't do it.
I think it's an easy one.
Making life easy for themselves, but that's
I think this one's too easy. It's too easy, that one. So we'll see. Right, okay, Ginger's in. Let's go right back then.
Right back. So there's some. What I would say is there's one front runner for this, but I'm insisting on having honourable mentions and doing the analytics. So there are two. Gonna be honest here, two weak honourable mentions out of this.
Yeah.
So as a result, I'll leave the front runner to the end because I don't want to spoil it too much and have people on the edge of their seats. So the first weak one, and again, it's quite weak, but for me, it's Zabaleta, because I think yes, towards the end, he was shot. His legs were shot, and you had 3 players ahead of him. You had Ngakia, Johnson, and Fredericks, arguably ahead of him towards the end. And it was really frustrating that he got offered an extension on large money when you couldn't give Ngakia a full-time deal on the 10 grand or whatever it was a week he wanted. So he got some, although that's not his fault, that is the board's fault. That is not Zabaletta's fault. And he was quite honourable in that he turned it down. He goes, well, look, I'm not match fit. I've got a calf injury. I'll turn it down. I don't need it. And I think he was, the amount of times I remember Baz on Twitter would say the same thing. His legs are gone. People going, oh, Zabaletta's legs are gone, and then he'll come out and have an absolute stormer.
Yeah.
Like his assist for Anderson against Man United in the 18-19 season, things like that. And I just think he was an easy target because of his age and because he was on high wages. I mean, but it's weak because towards the end he was bad, and more people than not did rate him when he played. Just his pace started to go towards the end. Towards the end of his second season, his pace started to go, and it was completely gone. I remember I was at Sheffield United at home. I was right by the away fans, by the goal, or right on the corner. So the corner flag was like here. I was here. And Zabaleta just got skinned.
Yeah. It is.
Every time.
And it's similar to, obviously, nowadays, I mean, back in the day, say, talk about Stuart Pearson, we had that, sort of a run, didn't we, of sort of aging left backs with Pearson and Winterburn and Chris Powell and, Rufus. And to be honest, you could get away with that at that time of the football, because now you have to be, now you've got to be this, you have to be, almost a winger in terms of pace as a fullback.
Perfectly, without even meaning to, and also for the record, we haven't discussed this, segues into honorable mention number 2.
There we go.
He was fantastic going forwards, especially in his loan spell. But then when he went permanent, off-field problems happened, and he wasn't the same. And I always maintained he wasn't the same without the dreadlocks. But it's Sebastian Schmel.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, that man was so good in his first season. Yes, he was a poor second season, but that was a season where all of our defenders were poor. The only defender that came out of that looking all right was Glenn Johnson and Gordon Bennett, Rufus Brevitt, came out looking a little bit like a professional defender. I can remember things like Christian Daly tripping over the ball, which led to a goal against someone that season. It was horrendous. I remember the season highlight where, the old school, the old school commentator, the old posh commentator we used to have on the old season reviews goes, and where was the defence? For how many goals? So that so to single out Schmel for being bad in that season, I still remember him bombing forward. It's all right. Bombing forward against Southampton at home, where we lost last minute James Beattie goal. We had quite a lot of chances. And Di Canio had a sitter go over the bar, but Schmel was bombing forwards that game. Again, I could be remembering this wrong because I was 10 when I watched it on TV. But Sebastian Schmel for me does not. I don't think he gets. I think he gets more sticks than he deserves, but it's not quite the level where it comes to disrespect. So that's why these two are the honourable mentions. But the disrespected right back for me personally is one of those ones where I said, in hindsight, at the time, I remember being on forums and fans slaughtering this guy. And when he got released on a free, they were like, well, thank God. And we had right back problems for quite a while. I mean, Faubert was our only solid right back until, really, I mean, Joey O'Brien was okay for times, but really until we signed Zabaleta, this was our last solid right back. And it's Lucas Neill for me. I think Lucas Neill, looking back in hindsight, was a phenomenal player for us. Really committed. Naturally a centre-back playing right back. Absolute colossus in the Great Escape. But 07-08, he had a bit of a poor season, was always quite out position. You always get too far up the pitch. But I remember hearing back that he had, I think he his wife was heavily pregnant by this point, and there was lots of problems. And then he had the young baby. He was getting lots of sleepless nights, which affected him training stuff. But he was always a leader. You always hear great stories about how great he was in the locker room, or I call it locker room, the changing room, and genuinely was just a good, decent bloke. Like, I remember I went to the Fan Open training day in the beginning of the 07-08 season. Fans signed everyone. And I remember just Lucas Neill signing my thing. And I just go to him. I go to him, so you're going to be our captain? He goes, maybe, mate, maybe. Like that big smile on his face. He goes, maybe, and then just mouths. That's what he said. He couldn't say, but he was like, like that. So yeah. So for me, I think he was a good club captain. He was definitely a good club ambassador. Always a bit of a shame, really, because my mum really fancied him, which sort of put it off a little bit for me. Maybe be a bit, oh no, I can't really, like Lucas. But I always liked Lucas Neill. I always, even at the time, I was like, oh, he's not that bad. He's just not as good as he was when he first signed for us. And I think looking back, we could have done with him in Zola's last season, just another leader alongside it, because Upson wasn't as good a captain as I think we thought he was going to be.
Yeah.
The captain, the armband hindered Upson, personal opinion. He doesn't make the list because I think, again, he got the accurate amount of stick for the accurate amount of problems. Whereas Lucas, that's why Upson hasn't gotten near this list. But Lucas Neill, again, like those following two seasons, we'd have killed for someone like Lucas Neill at right back.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, definitely. As you said, everyone we've interviewed around that time of nothing but the utmost admiration about Lucas Neill as a player, as a captain, as a team captain, not just a captain of the pitch, but a proper club captain. Like making sure that I think Anton was saying he'd go around literally everyone and take a percentage of their win bonus when they did win, and give it to split between the tea lady and the boot boys and the ground staff and stuff like that. Brilliant.
He always come across like, again, to steal a common phrase. As like a top bloke. He was just seen like a top bloke. But yeah, so Lucas, so that's the goalkeeper and a solid, a pretty solid back four, really. I mean,
yeah.
My main concern was getting players that were really poor in this lineup. I wanted this to be a strong lineup that could, in their era, play together, be quite well. I mean, I'm not too sure on the amount of pace, with the exception of Gabbidon in this defence, but I'm mentally, as I said, football wise, I'm mentally stuck in the late 90s, early 2000s, so it will do. So, but we're going to more than make up for that with an absolute stellar midfield.
That's what I like.
Stellar midfield with some great honourable mentions. So we start on the left wing.
Yeah.
Now, disrespect can come in many forms. This one does not necessarily come from fans, but from England managers and the Football Association. And I love the England manager at the time would have been Sven, and I loved Sven, but how Matthew Etherington didn't get a look in the 2006 World Cup is beyond me. And I know you had Mark on the other day who said the exact same thing.
Yeah,
we're parallel thinking on our thinking. Etherington, out and out winger, is a bit of a throwback to the 70s and 80s when he played, early 90s when he played. Always looked like he was going to do something on the ball. Bad spell, lots of personal problems in that 06-07 season. One of the contributing factors to our downturn in form, in my opinion, was because the consistent wing play we had in 05-06 was beautiful. And I think the fact that in 06-07 we had to bring Yossi a bit more central, to be a bit more creative in the middle, to make up for Rio Coca, and I think we ended up playing Tevez left wing at one point, So, but 07-08, Etherington away at Reading. If you haven't, go on. I think what's his name? Vinny uploads a lot of games. Next time he uploads that game or whatever, you'll easily find it on his YouTube channel. Like Etherington's goals that day were brilliant, especially his second. His second, probably the best goal. Probably I'd say better than his playoff semi-final goal, because that was just a hit and hope. I think it's disrespectful saying hit and hope, but it's one of those ones where he would hit that 100 times, it would come off 2 or 3.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Both of those goals against Reading, especially the second one, like the placement was there. It was like Snodgrass's away at Fulham.
Yes.
The 18-19 season. It was a bit like that. Like, it was just perfect placement, top corner, bang, keeper, no chance. So Etherington's there. And then you've got Mark Keller, who played left and right wing for West Ham. Now, it's a strange one in that I just think this is a player that was bloody good for us. He, put in a great performance in the Intertoto Cup final. I think for the fact that I'll be honest, I know people, not going to name them, but on YouTube channels that do not know who Mark Keller is. And couldn't tell me that he was French. I was like, what nationality do you reckon he's? Oh, Irish. I'm like, French. He's a Frenchman. He was never a top footballer. Never going to claim. But again, this is a player that I think he's certainly an unsung cog in the players that we had in the Redknapp years.
Definitely.
His versatility on both wings was beneficial, and a type of player that we really could have done with in recent years.
Yeah.
Was in and out of the team quite a bit. Could imagine he wasn't. You could have had options to leave, but stayed. Not back then. I wouldn't have said it was for money. But so Mark Keller's there, but purely because of how much better he was, Etherington gets enough for me.
Yeah.
Because of how much he. And also, I'm a bit annoyed that I got his name on your quiz the other day, and I entered it just as it went. Just as it went. Like, I put the N. I literally typed the N and went to go enter. I hovering over the enter button, and it went, time's up.
Time's up.
I had some time. There was honestly for the who did we sign this player from before the options came up.
Yeah.
Before the options, and I was like, blind guess. Just click one. Yeah. It's great. But yeah, Matthew Etherington makes it on the left wing for me.
That's good.
So now we're going to go into the middle.
Yep.
And this is controversy. Central midfield is controversy central. And we're going to have all the controversial ones in one go. Okay. So we're going to start with controversial. So because of the disrespect he got when he left, especially considering he left Spurs.
Yeah.
Scott Parker. Fans booing him when he came back. That man could have walked years ago. That man could have just slammed his stuff on the desk after the first Zola season and just gone, I'm off. You're ruining my England chances. I'm only a standby at this World Cup simply because I'm in a relegation battle. I'm going to go to, let's say he went to Everton or someone like that. He'd go in and walk into that England team, I'd say. Similar to how Gareth Barry suddenly started walking into the England team when he went to City. I think the amount of hatred he got for leaving was completely unjust. He didn't kick up a fuss over leaving, as far as we're aware. He didn't refuse to play.
Nope.
He certainly, the one thing I would say, and I'm saying this from personal opinion, so if he ever sees this, I do apologise. But a couple of times in the Championship, I saw some of the tackles he'd go in for, and I go, he's worrying about getting injured.
Sure.
Yeah. I think the year before, whatever, he would have crunched in, whereas he instead sort of kept his ankle back. He didn't want to pick up a knock and maybe move away. And that was what made me go, nah, he's definitely because I think what we were trying to negotiate was a loan because we were that confident of going back up and we wanted him back the next year. And I think in the end, we just accepted a rounded up offer because I think he only had one. He only had, he signed a new deal, didn't he? So we had quite a few years left on him.
He did, yeah.
But yeah, and then the other option, this is where we're talking controversy central here, is because of the amount of stick he gets on Twitter for not getting 5 assists every England game and not scoring a bicycle kick every 5 games. Declan Rice, who can't do anything. There's that Fred. Look at how terrible Declan Rice is. Look at him. Oh, he can't do this. He can't do that. I think horrendous amount of disrespect. There is a player I'm going to mention. He's not an honourable mention. He's a dishonourable mention. He's a player that does not. I'm ruling him out, but I'm going to mention it in the Frank Lampard, ability-wise, gets disrespected from when he played for West Ham. We've had this on the West Ham way. Well, when he played for us, he was our best player.
Yeah.
Irrelevant of what was going on, he was our best player. Hands down. Joe Cole would have been, if he had stayed around for a year, Joe Cole would have probably surpassed him because Joe Cole developed so quickly. But Frank Lampard, he's not getting in this list because the amount of bollocks Frank Lampard has said in the press about always checking West Ham getting scores, having a party when they get relegated, saying how he wants to score the goal that relegates us. Get in the C. You're not getting in this lineup. You deserve the disrespect. You deserve the disrespect you get. But what I will say with an asterisk next to it is that we do need to at least acknowledge he was a phenomenal footballer for us.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Can't turn and go, oh, look, there was a bit about maybe some work ethic. Maybe towards the end he wasn't, up for the relegation fight. Worse or better, he still. I think that his last season, I believe he was our second highest goal scorer. Yeah, you see that fans go, oh, he was terrible. No, he was a bloody good footballer, and he deserved that move, and we got good money for him at the time. It's just such a shame he ended up being such a volatile brat at the end of it.
Yeah.
He didn't seriously grow a pair, but end of rant. But out of the two, and again, this is based on the disrespect and not ability. This is why I've paired them together, because ability-wise, there's an argument for one or the other.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with Parker, purely because the West Ham fans disrespected him. Although I think Rice gets disrespect from Twitter people, so does everybody. I mean, last night, Jamie Carragher was really praising Declan Rice in the build-up to the Chelsea game. I believe, I had the volume turned right down because it was affecting my mic, but I believe what I heard was Jamie Carragher praising the hell out of Declan Rice's forward movement and things, and saying that, so what, he's not getting these assists. Like, he's doing everything else. But Scott Parker, again, he got booed when he came back, and I was shocked hearing that. I was at university watching on TV, and my housemate was like, "Are you seriously booing Scott Parker?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it looks like it. That was horrendous." So Scott Parker gets in for me personally.
Yep, sounds good, and I totally agree. I'm in the Scott Parker camp. I'm very pro. It winds me up. When we talk about West Ham, when we talk about what we want from our players, it's putting in a shift, and I would literally see him crawl out the players. Car park. He'd literally been carrying West Ham for 3 years on his back, and just because he wanted to further his England career and further.
He had a chest infection and he still played, but he had the nose thing. That was we still lost. It was 1-0 Stoke. He had a chest infection and he missed the Liverpool game. We thought, right, well, we're still going to get spanked by Liverpool, and we did. It was horrendous. I think we were 3-0 down at half time, we got thingy. So and then the second centre mid.
Yeah.
So look away, Henry Tomlinson, but I'm going to suggest Radoslav Kovac, purely because he gets regarded as one of our worst central midfielders of all time. And it's not just referring back to what we have on our channel. Now, he is not great, but he is not the worst central midfielder we've ever had. We had Kwasi, Sanchez, Wilshere, Horlock, Alu Diarra. I mean, we've had some horrendous central midfielders. I mean, although I think it's a bit harsh, I'd say Robert Lee was worse for us in the centre of the park than Kovac. I wouldn't put Robert Lee in the category of the others, but we had central midfielders that have been worse. I mean, Adam Nolan weren't great in the Championship. I mean, we're talking about Championship players in 2004, but Radoslav Kovac, compared to that, he scored 3 goals in one crack. He called a cracker against Everton and some vital goals in relegation battles for us, especially against Wigan. I mean, he doesn't score that game. We draw. We're not safe that day, and then we've got we lose to Fulham and draw with City, and we're looking over our shoulders.
Yeah. Totally.
So Radoslav Kovac, within reason, gets a lot of disrespect in my opinion. Top. By all regards, a top bloke, but I'm not too sure he's the worst central midfielder we've had.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree. And as I said, I had the pleasure of meeting him once. One of the players' open training sessions, and so I don't know if you went to that one, but for some reason Sam put everyone in the upper centenary. It was absolutely pissing down for this open play training session, and he put all the fans on the upper centenary level, so no one could get any autographs or anything. And I was doing the older commentary that day, and it was pissing it down. And literally, like, it's been going about 35 minutes or so. Kovac turns up and stands right next to me, and he's like, "So what's going on?" I said, "Well, they're doing the five-a-side little thing. Like, shouldn't you be playing?" "Yeah, I'll just stay here," and just literally just stood behind me for the rest of the training session, almost hiding, like he was like didn't want to get, because it was a bit rainy. But yeah,
did he have the long blonde hair at this point, or was he
blonde hair? Yeah, and I'm about 5'5", so was you 5'5", 5'6", and so he pretty much crouched for about an hour. so he couldn't be seen. There we go. There's my Kovac.
Brilliant. Oh man, well the other right-sided central midfielder we're going for, although it doesn't really matter with these, is player very close to my heart. I had him. I really was impassioned fighting for him in my underrated 11. I think he became the underrated midfielder. I could be wrong, but it's Valon Barami, who he doesn't pick up that injury against City. He has a much bigger career, and they still played for some big clubs. I mean, Fiorentina, hey, they may not have done anything in a long time. Big club, He played for Hamburg, he played for Napoli. Okay, he played for Watford. Yeah. And genuinely was a fantastic footballer. Brilliant on the ball. Played in that little tight midfield three with Noble and Parker under Zola. And again, sadly, just picked up that knee injury. He doesn't pick up that knee injury. He has a different trajectory. He left in a lot of acrimony because he was very unhappy with Avram Grant, I believe, and sort of got sold on the cheap, actually. I think we only sold him for $2 million.
It's very cheap.
I could be wrong. I think he only had a short amount of time left on his deal. I think he only had a year, half a year or a year and a half. But he could have made a difference moving forwards in the 10-11. But he didn't really fit in the way that, especially with how Parker was playing, he didn't really fit in the way that Avram was playing.
No.
Whether Avram was ever going to change the style of play, I mean, it wasn't going to happen. He had bad enough time making a substitution. But yeah, Valon Barami gets in, and because he's far superiorly the better footballer than Radoslav Kovac, he makes it ahead of Kovac. Kovac is the honourable mention because of the disrespect people make. But yes, my fellow Swiss Superman, Valon Barami, he makes it. So Valon Barami is in this 11. As I said, it's a stellar central midfield. So obviously we could. I love him, but we couldn't have Kovac in a stellar central midfield. Which is why if I'd maybe gone for 4-5-1, could have had Rice in there, but I had too many strikers to pick from.
Oh, okay.
Too many strikers to pick from. I've narrowed it down to 4, with two of them getting in. But let's go with the right wing now. There is only one for me, but for the benefit of the doubt, I'm going to mention some more mentions, even though only one of them weren't really a right winger, but he played right wing for us. So Lee Bowyer played right wing for us for quite a bit, and I think in his second stint played very well for us.
Yeah,
my opinion. He didn't set the world alight, but he was a solid, consistent player. He came into his own quite a bit in the 07-08 season, had a bit of a renaissance. I remember Derby away absolutely ran the show that day. So that's one of the ones I'm going to put on the right hand side of midfield. But that's the honourable mention. But the one, and again, this is a very weak rationale, I would say, because I think it's very few. But it's again with Barami in that people don't remember how bloody good he was.
Yeah,
and sadly, he did return to us on loan. I'm eking it out a bit. He did return to us on loan and he didn't fit Allardyce's style, and he didn't quite have that yard of pace he had before. But you don't play for Chelsea, Arsenal, and Liverpool on a consistent basis and be a bad footballer. You can play for 2 of them, as David Luiz has shown, and Willian, but not 3. That's the rule. But it is little Yossi Benayoun, who, if on the amount of regard I have for him, would take the armband, but as a leader, it would have to be Scott Parker. I'm sorry, but Yossi Benayoun, that there's a saying I like using to say it again, makes me that man could football. Like that man could seriously football. The goal against Fulham, the goal against Villa in his first season, the Fulham and then Fulham at home the season after he played. He tried to win the game all on his own. Defensive work, goal line clearance with his face at Old Trafford when we were 1-0 up. And he's only a slight little. He's not the shortest bloke in the world, but I'm more muscular than him. Like he was a skinny guy. And he still got up there and put his face head on the line for us. I think he it's such a shame he didn't stay around, because I think him and Solano would have been a good little combination. Solano misses out on this. I did consider Solano as an option, but I couldn't define it as disrespect, because fans do look back and go, he's going, oh, but at the time, he was considered the only really, at that time, that season, the only good sizer, because Parker was considered a bit of a flop, if you remember, because he was injured, and then he came in and didn't score all the goals, and it was like, but then we figured out that he's a different type of centre mid, and he gelled well with Noble, so it worked out second season. But it's Parker's first season, he struggled to an extent, but that's why Solano doesn't get in. But if we kept him for 07-08 and maybe had him as a 10 with a resurgent Etherington and Solano on either side, and then drifting him out wide when Solano gets knackered towards the end, go 4-4-2. But hey, our loss was Liverpool's game, and Liverpool fans love him. And as much as I get frustrated with Liverpool fans, as I've documented well on my own on my show, they recognise good players when they see them.
Yeah,
Liverpool fans have a habit of defending their players to the hilt, even if they're poor, with the exception of Dejan Lovren. But they recognise when if you sign for them and you're not good, they'll say it.
Yeah.
They'll say he's a flop, like Christian Poulsen, Konchesky when he went there. They will out and out say, it's a flop. Benayoun, I've not met a Liverpool fan with a bad word to say about him.
And first player to score a hat-trick in the Premier League, Champions League, FA Cup, I think, as well.
I don't think it was I don't think
something like that. It's a quiz question, isn't it? It's a quiz question. He was the first person to score a hat-trick in. It's like something like that. But
anyway. I haven't brought it with me, but because of my love of Yossi Benayoun, someone actually did buy me on the cheap online an Israel football shirt.
Brilliant.
But obviously, because of what the state of Israel do, it can be quite controversial to wear out in public. They're quite controversial.
Yeah. Well, also, I used to work for a Jewish company, and the guy sat next to me was called Yossi. So it was always, I just found it hilarious. Yoshi.
Yeah, it's not the most common Yiddish name, but it's not an uncommon name.
He's Joseph, but they called him Yoshi. Was his nickname?
He only retired not too long ago. He was still playing. I think
it's retired.
He went back out. Because the Israeli Premier League is not the great standard it used to be. They had some bloody good players out there back in the day, like Avi Nimi. Yeah, Catan was good for them, not good for us. And that's one of my favourite things that I'm going to bring up, like the anecdote of Yaniv Catan. Oh my God! Like, I remember hearing that. I mentioned it earlier before we went on. Played for Total Manager 2004, and in Israel, their players were highly rated. You'd sign them in the championship again, and Yaniv Catan was one of them. I think on that old rating system, it's weird. Like Defoe, for example, Championship Defoe was an 11.0, whereas Premier League, Michael Owen was a 20.0, and Yaniv Catan was like a 10.0, which you think, okay, that's a good, very good Championship striker, and he was available cheap to come to sign a thingy. And I, read it. It's great goal scoring, or good goal scoring record out in Israel. I've looked it up since. It weren't astonishing, but it was consistent. 7 to 12 goals a season. And Yossi Benayoun recommended. He only cost us $100,000, and oh my God, he was shocking. He was so bad. I remember just like the ball rolled over his foot one time. I saw him play. He made so many more appearances than I thought he did, but as a substitute. This was one of those games where we rested the entire team for the FA Cup, and he came on with like 20 minutes to go. And first touch, just, instead of taking a touch, he just tries to pass it forward and run onto it, and it just goes out of play, and he turns around. I think he turns around to, I believe it was Scaloni, and just shrugs his shoulders and just goes, Yossi Benayoun gets in. Yossi Benayoun's, it's a star-studded midfield of Etherington, Parker, Barami, Benayoun. Could have been strong with Rice, but I can't justify Rice going in because it's just idiots on Twitter.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Don't only watch highlights of England games or something. They don't
And
watch
I mean, England's different, isn't it? Declan Rice playing for England, he plays as a CDM. He is a CDM, isn't he? Really, and he's not he's not encouraged to do the bombing forward, which he does at West Ham. He's a bit stifled at England, so they don't see the true Rice. I mean, some of the balls he was pinging at Chelsea game yesterday. Oh,
brilliant. His finish for his disallowed goal was an amazing side goal.
Great.
Anyway, so let's move on to the centre forwards, and so first centre forward I'm going to go. So it's a toss up, and so full disclosure, and I'm going to be very frank with people here. One of my picks is going to really annoy at people that watch this, and I probably will get people tweeting me going, "You're an idiot," but it's my list. I'm picking the player. All right. So, but in order to save it, I'm going to say the person who nearly missed out. So this one's honorable mention is the one where it was actually between them and someone else, but I'm going to say them now because I don't want people to go, how can you put him ahead? Is that him? So both of them, one of them is in it. So I'm going to say both of them now. So first of all, I'm going to go in alphabetical order.
Yeah.
So it's no hints as to who's who. So first of all, we're going to go with Craig Bellamy.
Yep.
Craig Bellamy was very good for us playing football. Definitely. And at the time, it looked like he went out, or the way he left was horrendous. But if you read his book, and I'm all for that, oh yeah, he would say it anyway, but if you read the book and then look back at, what Scott Dewberry was like, or what stories that came out about Scott Dewberry, how he handled our financial mess and stuff like that, is that he wasn't trying to leave, and they were just trying to create a bidding war. Spurs had bid 7 million or something. City with their money had bid 8. So then they went, oh, Spurs had just bid 10. Oh, Spurs had just bid 12, just to drive the money up. And then he went and spent it on Savio. I'd have kept Bellamy personally. I'd have kept Bellamy till summer. Imagine if we had Bellamy at the end of that 08-09 season, as we were pushing for Europe, working up top with Cole. Blimey, And I think yes, he had injury record was bad, but his goals to game ratio was brilliant. He very rarely, I can't actually remember a bad performance. I can remember games where he didn't set the world alight, but I can't remember bad performance. He had a good finishing record.
And he was a nasty bastard as well. He was a nasty bastard, wasn't he? He was our nasty bastard.
Yeah, he's one of those players, again, it's like with what I used to compare. I used to compare this when people went on about Anantovic, is that he's one of those players that you hate until he plays for you, and then you absolutely love him.
Yeah,
I mean, I call it Robbie Savage syndrome, because Derby fan said it was like he always hated Savage when he plays for him, when he does that little niggle, when he whines to the ref, when he gets someone a booking, you go, yeah, go on, Robbie. So it's Robbie Savage syndrome. But for Craig Bellamy, I've been him very disrespected, very good, consistent performer for us when he played. First season, absolutely blighted with injuries, and scored one of our most underrated goals, an absolute belter against Blackburn when we won 4-1, if you remember. He came off the bench, ball bounced in front of him, and he just whacked it from the edge of the area, volley, top corner, bang, straight up there. And also his goal Chelsea away that season as well was bloody good as well when we got a point. Chelsea away, half volley on the turn, ran into the fans, then Zola didn't celebrate. But I think Craig Bellamy, very disrespectful. And again, as it's alphabetical order, Bobby Zamora. Now, West Ham fans don't necessarily disrespect him, but I think as a footballer, his technical ability, some of his goals were beautiful. He did get stick initially at West Ham, if you remember. I can't remember, but I didn't really realise it until I heard the commentator say it. Because the commentator said, they've taken a while to warm him, but how they have now when he scored the goal when we got promoted.
Yeah.
On a massive goal scoring run at the end of that season. But it generally, like, he went on to play for Fulham. He did play for England, but I think, was he good enough for England on a performance basis? No, but ability-wise, I think his technical skill. I mean, it was just with Zamora, it was similar to Lukaku. He would have purple patches, like 06, 07. He started off really well, okay, Charlton at home, you might remember one of those goals is one of the most gopping goals you're ever going to see, where it's like the defender slips, Zamora tries to hit it on the turn and he hits it with like the inside of his boot. It bounces and bounces and rolls, and Luke Young tries to clear it off the line as Scott Carson falls over while Luke Young's going into him, and it just trickles in. And it was like, how has that happened? How has that gone in? So yes, he scored goals like that, admittedly, but a lot of his goals were bloody brilliant. And he had the one where Zamora crossed it in and Reina palmed it into his own goal. So he had two very fortunate goals in that solid start to the season. And actually Villa, to talk about it, Villa at home, we had one where Concesi headed it in, if you remember, and it sort of brushed his thigh and went in. And it was like, out of those, they said 5 goals in 4 games, but 3 of them were just luck. I'm sorry.
Goal scorer. I swear the season we went up in the Premier League for like no goal.
And he knocks it in. So
yeah,
4 of them are like fortuitous.
I think it was Liverpool or somewhere. It came off his arse and things like that. He was just like he said that he was in a purple patch, and he would do that as a striker. You know, he would do that, Bobby. But yeah, no, I don't remember. Yeah, he was. I mean, to be honest, you think about his goals. You know, he's probably one of the most prolific scorers in the world, considering how much his goals have been worth. He has scored 2 winning playoff championship final goals. That's 100 million pop.
It dragged Brighton up the league.
Yeah,
and he scored a goal. He scored a goal for Tottenham when they beat us in their cup final.
Oh, yes. So that's a few £100 million worth, isn't it?
Writes itself. But out of those 2, I'm going to say because simply the judgment call here is that although the wider footballing world did disrespect Bobby Zamora a bit, the fans love him. Whereas everyone knew that Bellamy was a great footballer, but he was given disrespect because of injuries, which you can't really control, and a manipulated story about the transfer saga. So Bellamy just edges it because I think it's with Bellamy, it's animosity, whereas Zamora, it's we think our player is better than you think he is.
Yeah.
Which I think there's too much of that in this list, personally. There's a bit too much of that. There's Etherington, there's Barami, there's Benayoun, there is James, not Gabbidon, but George McCartney, and Robert Green. There's 5 players that have already got on that list based off that.
Yeah, I get you.
And then striker number two in alphabetical order. So this is disrespected by a manager. I think he was, and again, I'm an apologist for Avram Grant, but he was horrendously disrespected by Avram Grant and the board and the club. It was Alessandro Diamanti, who was absolutely phenomenal the season beforehand. Okay, yes, he was, again, blew a bit of hot and cold. He came with impact. He was a bit of a liability, bit of a maverick at times, but he had a great work rate. He defended hard most of the time. Was always there for his fullback and had problems where at left back, because of Ilunga's injuries and problems, we had Jonathan Spector and Deprella there more often than not, who were not either not a natural left back or fresh as a daisy. He was like, Deprella was 18 at the time, and a player I think we could have kept hold of. I think he turned out to be an okay Premier or Serie B left back, and certainly could have done with him in the Championship instead of McCartney. No disrespect to McCartney, but it saves you a transfer, But that's beside the point. But Diamanti also had to handle being forced out left and handling, lots more defensive work due to either players out of position or inexperience. His free kicks were amazing. The goal against Birmingham, he could have placed that.
Yeah.
Nearly scored the greatest goal of all time against Hull, if you remember, where he saw Duke off his line and he shot from near enough the edge of the D of our own penalty area, tried to chip him. It might not have been as far out as I remember, but I do remember. And it hit the side netting.
Brilliant.
And it was like, if that had happened, I'm adamant, we had a corner defended it, and it came out to him at the edge of the D, sort of spun round, flicked it in the air. And as it's on the floor, the first bounce, he sees it and just lofts it in the air. it bounces by the centre by the penalty spot. Duke is miles from it. Duke is like on the edge of his D before he completely misjudges it, and it just sort of skews as it bounces and it hits the side net, and it was like that would have been the greatest goal of all time. Forget about Charlie Adam. He had about 15 yards on Charlie Adam, if that. But that's the thing. And then the other option, and this is from the disrespect he's currently getting from the fans. I think you know what's coming. If anyone watching this knows me, it is Sebastian Haller, because I think Sebastian Haller is being asked to play in a system that doesn't suit him. He's being asked to drop deeper, which does not fit not only his style of play. So if you want to call it an attitude thing, okay, but also his technical ability. We saw it last night. When Chelsea players slipped, he dodged round him and went through. He does not have the pace to play as a lone centre forward. He needs pace up to support, pass, run and make the space and ghost in. That's what he did at Frankfurt. Go watch him play at Frankfurt, and where he played in Holland, which I believe was Twente, but I haven't got his things in front of me. I'm 99% sure it was FC Twente. And he always played with one partner or in a free, where he's a deep lying forward in a free with two wingers pushing up. Yeah. Sorry to go on a bit of a tactic thing here, but fans suddenly, because he's not running around and doing everything, running is not part of his game really. No. He's not a ball carrying player like Antonio is. Fans are going in on him even more. Like, blame the management, blame the transfer policy, blame the fact that he was signed as a lone striker when he was never a lone striker because we didn't scout properly and we put all our eggs in Maxi Gomez's basket, but David Sullivan beamed it all up. As per allegedly, so I don't want to get sued. Allegedly, so Sebastian Haller is getting, and then you got people like, and again, you're just going to call him out again because I called him out everything. You got people like Lee Clayton, editor at Talksport, tweeting about, "Oh, he scored, but he didn't smile." Could care if he smiled. Could care. Nicholas Anelka barely smiled. He was a bloody good centre forward. Yeah. But what is even worse is that Haller does smile. There's a video West Ham First has got out now where every time he smiles, his head gets bigger. And by the end, his head is big on the screen. I think I actually sent that to Lee Clayton. So it's not just, I'm singling out Lee Clayton here, bit harsh, but lots of fans do it. But then but the fact it's the editor of Talksport, it's like, is that what Talksport care about? Whether a striker smiles when they score? Like, really? No wonder they're owned by the Sun. I believe they're owned by the Sun. I could be wrong there.
They are. They are.
Good. I don't want to get sued. But yeah. So Seb Haller is going to anger a few people. Seb Haller is my choice. Seb Haller is my choice to go in here because it's just the hounding of him is getting a bit much. I'm defending him, but as anyone who watches the West Ham Way watch-alongs will know that I will call him out. Yeah. I did give him an absolute bollocking at Leeds when he missed those sitters, mainly because of how much I defend him. But it's the fact that fans expect him to be Antonio and Onantovic light while scoring these bicycle kicks, while walking around with a big smile on his face, while being caught offside. He needs to smile when he's caught offside or something. And then if he does, people go, "Oh, look at him smirking. He doesn't respect the club. He can't win, the poor guy." He's not suited to the system, and the animosity and hatred, I'm going to say hatred that I see on Twitter for him, it goes beyond disrespect, in my opinion. There's an actual online vendetta against this bloke by his own fan base, and he's actually scored as many goals as Mikel Antonio in the league this season. I'm not even talking about the games against Hull, Hull and Charlton. In the league, he scored 3 goals. In the league, Antonio scored 3 goals. Antonio's overall play suits our system. Yes. Who's the better footballer? Hard to tell because they're 2 very different forwards. I tell you what, though, they make a bloody good partnership, wouldn't they? They'd make a bloody good partnership. So how about that? How about, hopefully David will speak to it, but how about being a little bit more constructive with it? And instead of just shouting, "Oh, Haller." So that's why Sebastian Haller gets in there, and you're probably going to get a lot of people annoyed by that because but I'm sticking by that. Normally I say don't at me, but if you want actually at me, my handle's down here. I'll debate this with you, but Sebastian Haller gets in.
No, I agree. Sebastian Haller, and you can tell. I think, and I had this discussion the other day. I think he's a better reactionary player than he is when he has time on his hands. Do you know what I mean? So, that's sort of obviously the bicycle kick, and obviously did it against Leeds, and that's a reaction. He sees it, he reacts. Whereas like Sheffield United, he got the ball, he thought, "Fuck it, I'm going to hit it." A reaction, didn't think about it. When he obviously Man United, when he famously sort of beat the man, thinks about it, he overthinks about it, and I think when he just lets his instincts run, that's when you know he's a good player, because then because it's a reaction thing, and he is a good player. As you said, he scored but it's a system, and unfortunately, too often than not, players are bought not just for West Ham but for other clubs as well. They're bought in position, they're bought to fit the team, but not necessarily the system. And
we didn't scout him right. We wanted Maxi Gomez as a lone striker.
Totally different people,
and it's it's what it is. I think his goal return has been okay. I think if he hadn't have been dropped post lockdown, I think he would have picked up goals. Maybe not as many as Mikel Antonio, but he certainly would have picked up goals. But so that's my 11 of Rob Green, George McCartney, Lucas Neill, Gabbidon Collins at centre-back, Etherington and Benayoun on the wings with Barani and Parker in midfield, and a strike partnership. And I think this would be one hell of a strike partnership. Bellamy and Haller. And for the record, I really deliberated between Zamora and Haller, because I was like, if I boot out Zamora for Haller, I'm going to get murdered. But that's why I compared Zamora to Bellamy to soften the blow. But when I was actually weighing up that argument with Haller and Benayoun, it's the fact that it's our own fan base slaughtering someone for trying their best. The system doesn't work, compared to our player is better than you think it is. Wow, which effectively is what the argument for the disrespect of Zamora is. Don't get me wrong, I think he's disrespected. I think everyone that I've mentioned has been there's a reason why they've been disrespected. Whether it's clutching at straws or not. But so that's my 11, and hope you've enjoyed it.
Very much so. Thank you for your time, Dennis. And just you today is the longest episode we've had,
because that's how much I talk. we spent 10-15 minutes talking about Netflix, so
that's it. And we had I think the longest one was last week, actually. Tom Henry took the accolade off Nick Marsh, and now you're top.
I'm top. Longest one. Oh no, I did think that was a bit an hour, but so we got the West Ham quiz in 3 hours, so I'm just going to go get everything set up for that now. Have my dinner, get that set off, and I'll get that going.
Lovely stuff. Thank you so much for your time, Dennis. And obviously, thanks to everyone for watching. Well done. Well done. At the end. And from me and from Dennis, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Wash those hands. Come on, your irons. And we'll see you again very, very soon. Take care, everyone. Much love.